afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. With a rapidly evolving security situation, increasing geopolitical challenges, and the rise of regional and global threats, the need for India to become self-reliant in the defence sector has become more pressing than ever. This is noteworthy. Military exports have risen sharply and imports have dropped on the back of policy announcements and initiatives and reforms by the current dispensation, and the country is on course to achieve an annual defence export target of more than 50,000 crore rupees by the year 2028 and 29. There was a time when defence forces faced shortages for critical equipment, and today we are self-reliant in the defence sector. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one achievement that all of us as Indian we need to be proud of. But how did we achieve this incredible feat? How have we scripted this history? Let's delve deeper and let's analyze the factors. Joining us is a very illustrious panel. On the dais, I have with me Air Vice Marshal Anil Golani, retired, Director General, Centre for Air Power Studies, an avid writer and author. He has written several articles on air power, national security, strategy, and the integration of the armed forces. He raised and commanded the first Harpy Squadron of the Indian Air Force. He commanded an Air Defence Direction Centre and an operational base as well. Delighted to have you, sir.
Thank you.
Also joining us on the dais, Major General AK Channan, retired. He is also serving as consultant, Society of Indian Defence Manufacturers. He is a defence veteran and an artillery officer who has led the Army's Make in India initiative for several years now. Having conceived and operationalized the Army Design Bureau in 2016, he headed this organization till August 2020, which was a single point engagement for the academia, industry, startups, and foreign engagement for technology. Pleased to have you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And AVM Golani, allow me to begin this discussion with you. In the light of current geopolitical situation, particularly in South Asia and Indo-Pacific, how do you see the vitality and importance of self-reliant India in the defence sector, and particularly for maintaining regional stability and security? And how do you see the overarching national security matrix of India align with the vision of self-reliant India in the defence sector?
Thank you, Kriti, for having me on this show. I disclaimer in the beginning itself that whatever thoughts that I say are going to be mine and they don't reflect that of the Air Force or the Government of India. But I think the leading question that one needs to ask is that what does India want as a nation? Does India want to be a great power or not? And I think the answer is very obvious, that we want to be there sitting on the high table. And all great powers manufacture their own arms and they have their own arms industries, and that is what India also is striving for. And to get there, I think the first and foremost that we need to think of in terms of the Indo-Pacific and the South Asia region is that we have to economically grow, and with this economic growth, your military power is also going to increase. And India aspires to be a a stabilizer and a net security provider in the region to our neighboring states and the IOR states, and also be the first responder, as we have witnessed in the recent past, in any crisis or disaster that is there, from the COVID to any earthquake or calamity from tsunami. So therefore, this is what India aspires to be, and our aim is to get there as early as possible.
That's right. And General Channan, your opening thoughts on India being the net security provider in the region.
Okay. So I'll just elaborate a little on what sir has said, or just add a little to what he said. You see, the last big war that happened was somewhere around 80 years back, from 1939 to 1945. If you cast your mind back to that time, who were the principal players in that war? So if you see, on one side we had US, UK, France, Germany, Russia, and China. Well, China was also on that side.
Axis and allies, yes.
Yeah, and the axis were Italy, Germany, and Japan. Today, 80 years down the line, they had set up military industrial complexes at that stage, but today, 80 years down the line, if you notice, almost 90% of all the arms export is being held by these people. So setting up a good military industrial enterprise has a very, very deep and a long kind of a implication. So I think it's time that we should now, in this rapidly evolving world where alliances are changing, we must get into this business very quickly, and I am glad that the government is putting a lot of emphasis on this, and we're moving in the right direction.
We have arrived, and how?
Yes.
So I was reading a very interesting fact that as a team leader, you have initiated the Make to process into the Indian Army, which has over 50 schemes pegged at approximately 40,000 crore exclusively open to Indian defence industry. Tell us, how is the environment changing, and how are these policies creating a conducive environment for the private players, particularly in defence manufacturing?
Okay, so defence is a little bit of a complex business. I think all businesses are complex, but since we are talking about defence, you need to actually first and foremost give a lot of emphasis onto the technologies.
That's right.
You need to build your own technologies, otherwise you will be forever dependent. You will only become something that I call an industrial slave. You will get technologies and you will just build stuff here and actually use the last end screwdriver kind of stuff. So you need to emphasize very heavily on technologies. Then these technologies put together create designs, the IPRs. You need to look at IPRs. The more IPRs that you have, the better products you will be able to put out to the world. Then of course the entire ecosystem of manufacturing, which is a multi-tiered ecosystem of after manufacturing there are specialist defense OEMs who put this entire thing together and who are well versed with how you got to deal with the business of defense. And then you need to have a complete ecosystem of certifications, testing, evaluations, etc. So when this whole thing has to be put together, you need to actually, to make a truly Atmanirbhar Bharat, you will have to attack from all directions.
That's right.
So if you see, the first thing is to get the manufacturing ecosystem, because that is where the quick ROIs come.
Right.
So the first thing that we launched is a make kind of a concept, like you say, the Make 2, in which we wanted the Indian industry to come in with small projects, fail small, fail fast, and continue to iteratively build up on this industrial base. So this whole process started somewhere in January of 2018. Thereafter we realized we need technology, so the IDEX program was launched in August 2018, and thereafter, to put all of this together, the defense corridors started coming up. So all of this actually was done with a lot of plan and a lot of thought behind it. It's still evolving, I would say, but I think we've really come a long way.
Absolutely, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
But AVM Golani, look at this difficult amalgamation. The need to be self-reliant in defense manufacturing and the need to procure advanced technology from foreign vendors. How are we performing this fine balancing act?
I think, in my opinion, when we talk of self-reliance, I think the concept itself has not been clearly understood. And if the policy is concentrating on indigenous content as self-reliance, then I think it is flawed. Because there are certain critical technologies, let's say for example, when we talk of fighter aircraft, there is engine technology which we still haven't mastered despite 20 years of effort. So I think in some areas we have to have a global vision and we have to think globally. And in my opinion, we have to go in for strategic partnerships which become mutually dependent so that nobody can pull the rug from under your feet at the times of crisis. And therefore, for these things, I think it would be foolhardy to insist upon self-reliance and not get anywhere.
That's right.
And we have to look at partnerships because whatever today we are procuring, in the end it has to be manufactured in India. So we have to look at it from that point of view and take that path forward.
Very legit point, sir. I'd like to take that to General Channan. General Channan, as AVM Golani is pointing out, that it's about self-reliant India as well, but also about strategic partnerships and symbiotic relationships.
Yes. So I actually fully agree with Sir Golani sir, because you see, it can't just be something that is mathematical in nature, 40%, 50%, 60%. It's a good place to start putting barriers and try and put some aspirational benchmarks, but then case to case basis we will have to analyze where we are in a particular system, and therefore we will have to peg ourselves in a manner that it is incremental. Of course, we need to stretch ourselves a little bit, and we also need to make sure that, you see, we are a very big market, we are a huge market for anybody. So we need to make sure that we create the right kind of catalytic environment here, that people actually start coming in here and parting with technologies a little bit more deeper than with every passing phase. That is happening. The strategic partnerships is one very good model. We put about 7 platforms on the strategic partner annual. A couple of programs have already rolled off, a few more are down the line. But as you see, when a policy is laid out, like this strategic partnership was laid out somewhere in 2016-17, and by the time you start rolling out a policy, you suddenly realize some part of it you've already acquired. The pace of improvement, or the pace of the Indian defence industry coming up to the standards is such that some places we already, like for AFVs and tanks, I think now we are in that space. But as he said, in the aviation place, we will need to make sure that we have the right mix, so that we are strategically there, and we also have some long-term goals of how to get to places where we aren't as of now.
Well, absolutely, sir. And you can just see that we have young minds sitting here, young India sitting here, and they need to know these stupendous stories of indigenization, these success stories of indigenization. So any particular interesting story, both of you, as far as indigenization is concerned? It could be missile, aircraft, naval vessels.
There are a couple of things, like when you look at weaponization in terms of conventional weapons, we have stopped imports, but when we look at precision weapons, we are still importing. If you look at the space sector, I think the private industry has opened up in a big way in the space sector, and these startups are doing fantastic things, like making their own rockets and launching satellites and all. So I think these are some of the success stories. And of course, if you look at the strategic sector as far as the nuclear domain is concerned, I think we have come a long way in that.
That's right. General Channan?
So yes, the startup ecosystem has really grown in defence. It is one of the biggest draws, and I think IDEX has a huge role to play in it. I could recount number of such success stories where young kids have come up and come up with really good products which have gone into our systems, and in some way contributed to the technological upliftment of platforms. But in this, just to break the monotony, I will recount a very different story. One day there is a couple of kids who came to my office, because we had opened it out. Anybody who has an idea can come and discuss it with us. And they came in school uniform. They left their satchels outside, and they had drawn some gun, some a rifle kind of a thing. And they said they have a damn good idea about rifles. We allowed them in. And of course, it was childish, so just gave them a good sandwich and sent them back. And the last thing they said is, sir, we've travelled all the way from Jaipur to meet you with this idea. And please don't tell our parents we skipped school.
All right.
So that's the kind of, the fervor that this whole thing has generated.
I'm sure after this session, they'll also come to you.
Yeah.
And they haven't even skipped their classes.
Yeah.
But moving on, A.M. Golani, how do you envision the future of autonomous and AI-powered systems like drones and UAVs?
The concept of manned, unmanned teaming, which has got a manned aircraft which is controlling drones, or it's known as the collaborative combat aircraft project. Advanced nations are pursuing it. There are some models which are already flying, like the MiG-28 Foxbat, which Boeing has produced for Australia. And in the United States, that Valkyrie program is there, and our own indigenous CATS, that is that Combat Air Teaming System, which is being developed by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, is progressing. The CATS Warrior and the high altitude pseudo satellite, which is known as Infinity. So if you look at the future, I would say about 10 to 15 years from now, that is the way to go, because you will have inevitably manned-unmanned teaming of a manned fighter with unmanned aircraft, which will increase the combat capability, like a force multiplier for the air forces across the world. At the moment, however, there are issues, there are legal issues, there are ethical issues, and there are issues of interoperability and artificial intelligence to be able to take decisions autonomously. But in my opinion, this is the way that we need to go, and I think it is in this domain that India has a great opportunity. If we can leverage this sector, we can become one of the leaders in the world in this domain.
So, how are we leveraging the emerging technologies, say artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and in fact other emerging technologies?
Yeah. So, you see, artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural learning, all these are, this is the base on which all this autonomy and all rests. So, there have been a lot of effort. Like I told you, the services have started their own initiatives. They have centers of excellence. They have, small funds, something called the Services Technology Board, the Army Technology Board, the Air Force Technology Board. They are funding programs in that. Then the DRDO runs a program called the Technology Development Fund. They have funds for that. And of course, the IDEX program has specific challenges, which is a set of challenges for artificial intelligence and such kind of niche technologies.
Absolutely, sir. But going forward, the nature of warfare is going to change, or rather it is changing. It is becoming more cyber. Even Golani, how do you see these challenges ahead in terms of, say, the security aspect of it, cybercrime that we've been talking about, and the cyber threat that we have?
If you look at purely from the cyber domain, India has a system in place where you have the National Cyber Security Coordinator who's looking at these things. But when you look at warfare as such, warfare is increasingly going to be hybrid. And when I say hybrid, it will involve all the elements of air, land, sea, space, and the cyber domains. And if you look at the armed forces are plugged in to, overcome these difficulties by operating seamlessly from one domain to the other between the three services. But if you look at the future of warfare, it will require a whole of nation approach, which includes DIME, that is diplomatic, information, military and economics. So in those terms, you require, somebody at the national or the apex level to fight the wars, as you've seen in the present wars which are going on in Ukraine, from everything is being weaponized today, from information to, oil to trade to sanctions, and everything can get weaponized.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. But General Channan, how do you see India leveraging its position as a responsible global power to increase its share in international defense market? I think that's a very debated point.
As I mentioned that in the recent few years, in the recent past, you will see the growth of China in a big way. It has gone all over the world and kind of tried to create businesses, etc. Notably in the entire continent of Africa. And if you travel to these places, you will realize that although they are there, but they do not really have a very good feel about them. In the sense that people are wary of them, they are suspicious, they are there because they need that kind of support, but they are not really happy about it. On the contrary, India has a very, very benign kind of a impression across the world. We are always taken as trusted, trustworthy, natural partners. All we need to do is put a little more, effort into this kind of thing, which we are doing through very, very aggressive, defense export programs, etc. And we, believe me, we will have a very good we have a very good standing, and we can actually convert this goodwill into a very good potential source of business, which is what the government is aggressively pursuing at this moment.
Even Golani, you wanted to make a point? Benign and global superpower.
Yeah, so Kriti, I think in my opinion, you have to have that trust factor and you have to have reliability. So to give you an example, India is manufacturing the advanced light helicopter.
Yes.
We are also manufacturing the Tejas. But the very fact that your own armed forces don't repose so much of trust in the PSU which is manufacturing this aircraft, with a promised delivery of 16, you can only give 4 in a year. How do we export?
Hasn't that changed recently, sir?
No. I mean, I think the chief just made a statement a week ago at one of the seminars where he said the order for 40 aircraft which was placed in 2016 still hasn't fructified. It's been 8 years since then. So I think we have to look at the manufacturing capacity in the country in a different way, because there is no competition to the PSUs. And unless you have competition, I mean the government is the sole buyer of this equipment, you will find that we will not be able to ramp up production rates to be able to export to the outside world.
Right, but we do have lists where the indigenization list, the government is doing its bit to ensure that the private players also come in.
Yeah, so these indigenization lists are, small steps to the larger whole. But when you look at the aircraft production capacity that the nation has today from the PSUs, it is not sufficient to meet the needs of the Indian Air Force.
Nonetheless, it's a very impressive start.
Yes.
And yes, sir, you wanted to make a point.
No, I totally agree. But you see, as I mentioned in the beginning, you can't apply this 60%, 70% bit across the board. So aircrafts and platforms which are flying, high performance platforms, it's a completely different ball game. Whereas there are certain land systems and all where we are already there. So let us actually start working on the exports and the things that we have a good. For example, artillery guns. I think now today we have the finest artillery guns, the best in the world, that are being manufactured here in India by the Tatas and Bharat Forge, and it's already being exported, and it is being exported to foreign countries in Europe.
True.
Even before the government of India has placed orders. We are in the process of getting the orders soon, but that's the kind of, if you make a good product, it will sell wherever.
Absolutely, sir. And let's be sanguine that we'll achieve the defense production target of 3 lakh crore by the year 2029. And of course, now let's open the floor. I'm sure they have very interesting questions.
Jai Hind, sir. This is Suraj Kumar from Ambedkar University, Delhi. I am pursuing Masters in Hindi. Sir, I have a question to General Channan, sir. That is, Bande ka jigra is more bigger than any other technology. So, sir, when you were a youngster, when lieutenant, then major, captain, etc., then how you keep motivated yourself and your boys?
Okay, now actually this is a totally different domain this question comes from. You see, when you are in unit, when you are in younger days of service, you are part of a particular unit. That unit actually becomes like a home to you. The naam, namak, nishan of that particular organization is primary in every act that you do. And that itself is a huge, being part of a setup, taking pride in the reputation of the Indian Army and your unit, your formation at large, is a very big motivation factor.
And yes, of course, there was a famous statement yesterday that don't work for money, work for naam, namak and nishan. That's what I think the forces believe in. Let's have the next question, please.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Harsh Kumar. I am from Sri Aurobindo College Evening, Delhi University. My question is for Major Sir Golani. Sir, when you were young, what or whom made you inspired or pursue a career in Air Force?
I think, the dream or the aspiration to become a fighter pilot was there from childhood. And I think when I was a young child, about 10 years old, the 71 war had happened, and used to see these fighter aircraft flying, and I dreamt that one day when I grow up I want to become a fighter pilot. It's just that God has been kind, and I have been lucky, and I became a fighter pilot.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Abhinav Kumar Singh, and pursuing my graduation course in mathematics honors from Delhi University, and I am 20 years old. Sir, I have a question. How can someone at my age prepare themselves for both academically and physically to pursue a career in the Indian Air Force?
I think Indian Air Force has got a website, if.nic.in, where all the career opportunities are mentioned over there, whether through the NDA or through the Services Selection Board. And I think what you need is that strong motivation and desire in your heart to excel and do well, and hard work will never fail you.
It's true. Can we have the next question? CEO Sansad TV, please.
I'm not a youngster, so these people obviously want to join the armed forces. Now I'm crossed that stage. No, I wanted to ask, suppose for both the panelists, suppose you was to give one point in which the policy of the government, you would want to see one small change in policy which will maybe improve our Atmanirbharta. What would you suggest?
I think the defense minister made this year the year of defense reforms, and I think the defense secretary himself admitted to the fact that our acquisition procedures are not keeping up with the time. So this is the year that the policy needs to be changed. That is one. The second thing is the policy and the procedure, we need to delineate the two, and the policy needs to keep changing and evolving with technology, with geopolitics, and our procedures should be nimble enough so that they keep pace. We get stuck in our system because of the IFA and the finance ministry and all, which puts stumbling blocks, and the L1 concept. So I think these are major hurdles that we need to get over.
Nobody is here from the finance ministry. Yeah.
Okay, so I tend to agree with what sir has said, but you see, our procedures were initially designed to basically acquire from abroad. So there were a lot of checks and balances that were there. Now what has happened is that we are actually putting barriers to imports, and we are doing a lot of stuff inside. So when you do a lot of stuff from within the country, the entire ecosystem is very much under your control. You can actually physically go visit, etc. So I think the processes will have to become a little more, aligned towards the fact that most of the products are now coming out of the Indian military industrial ecosystem, and therefore these people are here to stay, and therefore we need to change.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself Aditya Kumar, and I am currently pursuing economics as a degree from University of Delhi. And my question to Anil sir is, how can someone who choose not to join the military services can still contribute to the national defense, especially emphasizing on the innovation part and the strategic thinking part?
Thank you, Aditya, for your question. I think all of us contribute in some way or the other towards national security, and I think there are ample opportunities available to work in the startup sector, in the defense industry, as well as the academia and the think tank sector, because the writing that you do eventually affects policy decisions when people read through that. So there are numerous ways in which you can contribute to national security, and I am sure you are doing that in whatever you are pursuing.
General Channan?
Yeah.
Some pep talk to Aditya?
No. So I actually wanted to, it's a good question which I really wanted to put a couple of things. You see, firstly, there have been ample opportunities that have come about by the Ministry of Defence itself. Like he said, the startup, there are so many ways in which you can engage with the system and actually contribute towards national security. The other thing is that the character of warfare is changing, as was mentioned earlier. So you have these days things like social media is becoming a form of warfare, cyber, etc. So when this kind of a thing happens, the warfare is not confined to the physical nature of battles at the borders. It actually is today everybody is a soldier, because in some way or the other you need, and there are people who are contributing while they are not in uniform, etc. So you really, today's security of this nation has become everybody's responsibility more than ever before. So yes, you all can be part of this system, and there are many avenues to do this.
Yes, Mohit, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Jai Hind to the panel. Sir, I wanted to ask you, when we speak about capacity and about Atmanirbharta, we generally talk about industries, but we also are dividend rich. We have a very skilled country. We are dividend in terms of demography. We are very rich in terms of our demographic. So in terms of input to run these industries, what is your opinion? I would like to ask both of you that, is our input in terms of our skills, are they sufficient to create this industry that we are aiming towards in terms of education, like engineering, design, or if not, what is it that our universities need to focus on to help us on this journey?
So matching the skill set with the industry need.
Yes. So, this is again a very good question, because I think as we upscale and this whole thing grows in a manner that we are envisaging, we should be exporting 50,000 crore worth by another 2-3 years down the line, etc. And the growth that we are envisaging, we need so many more skilled people. And the skill sets in defense are a little different from the normal industrial skill sets, though there is an overlap. Because to make a missile and all, you can't pick up a normal engineer, you probably have to train him. More importantly, once you have actually got that kind of a highly skilled person, then you also need to make sure that you have to engage him for a long time. You can't let him back into the civil environment, because he or she will probably not find the right kind of employment for the skills that they have acquired. And secondly, those kind of skill sets are very easily, or they are much in demand, sometimes not by the right people as well. So yes, we need to have a very, very robust policy on this. We did, and all the three services are very actively engaging with IITs, universities, etc. But yes, this is an area where a lot more has to be done. We need to have very, very specific courses or programs designed around creating skill sets for defense. That is an area that we really need to work on. It's an opportunity for people. Right now, the only focus that I see in the academy, and I may be actually held to what I am saying, is that since some funds and all grants, etc. are available, they are largely looking at that to do some research projects. But skilling people to that level is something that we need to look at.
Right, sir. Yes, Mr. Nair.
Good afternoon, sirs. Thank you for being here. My question is directed to Major General Channan. In your current role as that of consulting manufacturers organizations, what avenues do you think could be there for these youngsters? Thank you.
Okay. So, as I said, defense will require a very specific mindset to engage with. But, that specific mindset is more towards, doing national good than towards probably commercial this thing. That is one, which I find today's youth are very highly motivated to engage with any kind of military anywhere. I mean, that's something that is remarkable in all our youth today. They are more nationalistic than ever before that I have seen. Yes. So as far engagement is concerned, I probably come back to the same point that we have now a number of avenues. We are open. We are trying to create, awareness things, know your army, know your air force. We are, putting out things for people to come and pick up and engage with us. We have a space for all kinds of skill sets. We have space for, anybody who has a good idea, there will always be a space, and probably if that idea finds traction deeper into the system, there is also multiple avenues of funding available to kind of start up. And believe you me, I can narrate number of examples of people who've come up with small ideas and today are CEOs of small companies here and there. So I guess we are living in an era that is, that has never been before. There is so much of enabling happening from the services around, and not only services, the paramilitary, everybody who's in the security establishment is openly engaging with the youth, trying to pick up ideas. As I said, the ideas need to, kind of find traction into the system.
That's right, sir. And as you said, that no power in the world can stop an idea whose time has come.
Whose time has come, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Sai.
Sir, very namaste. I'm Shyam from Sansad TV. We are really fortunate to this very enlightening discussion. So the present scenario of defense manufacturing and export is really very pleasant and very promising, and the projection is altogether going to be on a different level. My question is that earlier, if we go back to in time, 10 years, 20 years back, we had the same potential, we had the same opportunity. My question is that what was holding us back that time, and what really triggered this time this phenomena, so we have achieved this type of really remarkable feat?
I think, I will relate it with a live example of the fighter aircraft. In 2007, we issued the RFP for the MMRCA, that is the medium multi-role combat aircraft. And it took us 5 years to have the selection for the Rafale. And unfortunately, politics played the spoil sport at that time. And because of, I don't want to get into politics, we didn't go in for that. And many years later, 2016, we signed the G2G contract for 36 Rafale. So if you go back to that time, let us say, for example, we had bought the Rafale. The contract was to manufacture them in India, do license production with HAL. And had we done that, that would have helped today in the production of the LCA also, and we wouldn't be where we are today. So this is, I can give you a live example of why we didn't do it. Politics.
And as we all know, that political will is of paramount importance, and we've seen that.
So, a couple of more points that I will add. You see, the potential was always there, but there have to be 3-4 things that have to, come in together. The first is unleashing of the policy, or, unfettering of the policy. So, I think one of the pivotal changes happened in 2015 when the new DPP was written. This was the first time that the defense procurement policy was written after a board was constituted under Mr. Dharinder Singh. It was called the Dharinder Singh Committee. They actually analyzed what all changes should happen in policy to make this Make in India actually happen. So the first is, and after that there have been a series of policies, as I mentioned, measures. The DPP has become a living document. It changes every time when there is so it's become very flexible. In fact, the DPP 16 writes that this is a living document, which means that it will continuously be alive to the aspirations and the changes around it, and it will incorporate it very quickly so that it is able to respond to. That is one. The second thing is the implementation. Policies can always be there. It is the implementation. The implementation has to be a little coercive in nature. You have to make sure that things happen. So at times you will have to put some artificial barriers like the lists, etc.,
yes,
to make sure that you steer the whole thing in a particular direction. So I think the implementation has been very good. The third thing that is there is the response of the private sector and as a resonance the response of the public sector to actually now come up to and live up to their thing. They have succeeded in certain places. Some places, you know, it's work in progress, etc. But I think these three things have really made the change. And the last point that I want to add is, you can, as a nation, as a military, absorb that much. But the scales required to be competitive are more. So the government has also put in a huge thrust on exports. So once that happens, you know, you artificially create a larger kind of a scale for things. Just as a parting one sentence, you know, if you buy something from Israel or any country, Israel is just a representative. If you buy something from Israel, you take out that much money from your GDP and actually contribute to the other country's GDP. So suddenly we realize, why not make everybody else contribute here? So that is the thrust on exports, and that is how exports are so very important in the system. They give scale and they also bring in inputs from external economies.
Absolutely, sir. And of course, the fact that the gestation period is very long, and for a decade there has been policy consistency. So the risk-taking capacity even of the private sector has increased massively.
Yes, absolutely, I agree with you. Yeah.
Let's take another point, another question. Yes, please.
Very good afternoon to all. I am Aditya Singh from Sri Aurobindo College Evening, Delhi University, where I am pursuing BA program in English major. My question is for Golani sir, that there was a segment where you spoke about training and skill development. So my question is related to the training of fighter pilots, that how they are trained to stay this much calm and composed during high stress situations. Thank you.
I think, you know, when you're sitting inside the cockpit, you are the only person who's doing everything, and you're not only responsible for the machine that you fly, but also for the safety of your compatriots who are flying with you in formation. So I think it comes inherently with practice, and it comes with dedication, and, you know, mindfulness is what I would say it comes. And with practice, I think everybody can achieve it, though there are some limitations in terms of medical standards like eyesight and, you know, anthropometric measurements of hand, eye, leg coordination. But I think fighter pilots are a breed apart, and they are the same across the world, and they undergo this rigorous training which keeps them fit.
And before we wrap up this session, closing thoughts of both our panelists. How do you see our defense policy evolve in next 10-15 years? Particularly, you've mentioned information warfare, you've mentioned hybrid warfare, and perhaps space-based conflicts as well. AVM Golani?
Yes, so like I said, policy needs to keep continuously evolving with changing times and with technology, and it's a good thing that the government has earmarked this year as the year of defense reforms.
Yes.
And we need to keep pace with the times and not be lethargic or bureaucratic in our changing of policies.
Yes. General Channan?
I think the policy is actually running well ahead of time. It is setting pace for the processes and etc. to follow up. But yes, with the changing character of warfare, we need the policy to become much more faster, because when you talk about, you know, the niche technologies, how quickly they are coming into the battlefield, etc., you cannot have very long gestations to try and put them in.
Right.
So the policy will focus on very, very quick, you know, scouting and delivering of technologies onto the battlefield.
Absolutely.
Because that is what will give you the edge.
And of course, will emerge as
Yes.
global superpower in the defense sector as well. But thank you so much for sharing your perspective, AVM Golani and General Channan. I'm sure this will help these young minds articulate their aspirations as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you, Namita. Thank you, Kriti.